Roosevelt fell in love with the West, and with the prospect of quick riches it seemed to offer virtually free of charge. He was just one of hundreds of eager entrepreneurs, hoping to cash in on the beef boom on the northern plains. Everything seemed to suggest it was a sure thing.
A good-sized steer, when it is fit for the butcher market, will bring from $45 to $60. The same animal at its birth was worth but $5. He has run on the plains and cropped the grass from the public domain for 4 or 5 years, and now, with scarcely any expense to its owner, is worth $40 more than when he started on his pilgrimage.
All one needed to do was buy a herd and turn it loose on grasslands that seemed as limitless as the profits they promised. Cotton was once crowned king, wrote a Western newspaper editor, but grass is now. Fortune seekers from England, Scotland, and Europe invested after reading newspaper stories that proclaimed routine profits of 40 cents on the dollar. Marshall Field, the Chicago dry goods king, bought a herd. So did William K. Vanderbilt, the railroad magnate, and Joseph Glidden, the man who manufactured barbed wire.
Rich men's sons from the East were nothing new as far as I was concerned. The range in the 80s was as full of them as a dog's hair of fleas, and some of them were good fellows and some were damn fools. Teddy Blue Abbott. In 1886, the only new range left in Montana was north of the Missouri River. The Northern Pacific was running through central Montana, and the settlers had come in so thick they was crowding the cattlemen everywhere, causing the range to be overstocked. Teddy Blue Abbott.
By the summer of 1886, the once booming cattle business was in trouble. $7.5 million hungry cattle were now competing for grasses which every year grew less plentiful from overgrazing. In some places where it had once taken just 5 acres of land to support a steer, it now took more than 90. Big herds of voracious sheep were beginning to move across the landscape, and farmers were appearing, turning grasslands into fields, putting up barbed wire fences, driving cattle from their crops. Meanwhile, beef prices were dropping. The summer of 1886 was hot and dry. On the overgrazed ranges, the cattle grew thin and weak. Then came winter.
In November, we had several snowstorms, and I saw the first white owls I have ever seen. The Indians said they were a bad sign. Heap snow coming, very cold. It got colder and colder. It was hell without the heat.
On the northern plains, it began snowing on November 13, 1886, and did not stop for a month. The cattle struggled to stay alive, nosing through the snow in search of what little grass remained. January 1887 was the coldest month anyone on the northern plains could recall. The snow fell so hard during one 72-hour blizzard, a survivor wrote, that it seemed as if all the world's ice, from time's beginnings, had come on a wind which howled and screamed with the fury of demons.
It was all so slow, plunging after them through the deep snow that way. The horses' feet were cut and bleeding from the heavy crust, and the Cattle had the hair and hide wore off their legs to the knees and the hocks. It was surely hell to see big 4-year-old steers just able to stagger along.
The unsheltered, helpless cattle began to die. Some, too weak to stand, were simply blown over by the savage wind. Others, their feet frozen into the ice, died like statues. When the snow and ice finally began to melt, cattlemen understood for the first time the magnitude of what had happened. Dead animals were everywhere, hundreds of thousands of them, sprawled across the hillsides and along fence lines, heaped at the bottom of coulees where the snow had trapped them, swollen and bobbing in the rushing rivers.
I saw countless carcasses of cattle going down with the ice, rolling over and over as they went, sometimes with all 4 stiffened legs pointed skyward. For days on end, tearing down with the grinding ice cakes, went Death's cattle roundup.
Ranchers scoured the prairies for survivors. The first day I rode out, one remembered, I never saw a live animal.